What is up, MFers, and welcome back to part number 2 of talking about how forward-facing sonar is destroying the sport of fishing. If you guys missed part number 1, I'm gonna link it right down there below. But basically, I did something in that first video that is unheard of, unspeakable in this day and age in the fishing industry, and that is I took actual objective data gathered by scientists instead of just coming out with a bunch of subjective takes and opinions about something that I don't really know anything about. Now today, we are going to actually analyze forward-facing sonar and its effect on the top levels of bass fishing, specifically the Bassmaster Elite Series and the Major Leagues Fishing Bass Pro Tour. And while we like to disagree on everything in the tournament fishing world between different organizations, I think it's safe to say the large majority of the bass fishing community considers the Bassmaster Elite Series and the MLF BPT the two top circuits in the sport. But guess what, guys? We're gonna do something in the video today, again, that is completely unthinkable. Instead of just hopping on our little message board or online fishing forum, or even just going to our bass club meeting and talking about how some technology we don't understand is wrecking our sport, and it's video game fishing, and our legends are getting kicked out of the sport.
They took our jobs. Yeah, they're down. Took our jobs. They took our jobs. They took your jobs.
Unfortunately, we are actually going to take a look at the data. We're gonna look at the anglers that are in the Elite Series, in the Bass Pro Tour, how they fared prior to live scope and forward-facing sonar, and how they have fared afterwards, and see what anglers have benefited, and if it truly is a takeover by scopers. We're gonna talk about that bullshit term a little bit later too. And we're also gonna take a look and see if we have actually increased catch rates and how they have changed over time with this new technology. There's some information I'm gonna share with you guys that I have never seen laid out before, that some of it really surprised me, some of it didn't, but you guys are gonna wanna see this. Let's just talk quick about some of the sentiments and some of the subjective opinions that have become so popular and easy to just latch onto in this world of negativity in our society that is, now made its way to the fishing industry for a long period of time, but especially I feel like the last year or so, it's just been, let's talk about forward-facing sonar and social media to have a chance to become relevant. So the number one negative subjective opinion about forward-facing sonar that I see spread around in our industry and talked about more than any, of course, is the age issue. And that is that young anglers can pick up on how to use forward-facing sonar so much easier than older anglers, because younger anglers grew up in a generation with cell phones and the internet, and the older anglers aren't able to pick up and learn the technology as quickly. And so that means, based on what these people with these subjective opinions, it means that younger anglers which don't deserve and haven't earned the right to compete at a high level are now able to easily compete at a high level, because there is very little to no skill involved with forward-facing sonar, and therefore they're getting ushered in. The younger anglers are coming into the sport, yet the older anglers that deserve to be there aren't able to learn the technology as well, and they're getting pushed right out of the sport. Now, I don't think there's any criteria to measure whether or not it takes skill or more skill or less skill to cast at a live moving target than it does to side scan 100 feet out a school of fish, or drop on a fish on 2D sonar, or read a topographical map on your map chip. I don't know how we could ever compare that data. But the good news is we now have had 5 full fishing seasons since the Bass Pro Tour split off from the Bassmaster Elite Series. And I realized that the anglers shuffled around all over the place. So before then, it's really hard to compare what anglers were succeeding and really having top 20 Angler of the Year finishes like we're gonna study and talk about here. Because obviously, 80 guys went over to the Bass Pro Tour, a bunch of guys got recruited to be on the Elite Series, and now a bunch of guys have qualified for the Elite Series, and then a bunch more guys have gone from the Bass Pro Tour back over to the Elite Series. But all we can do is study the data that we have, and we have 5 full years now, so let's take a look at what has happened over the last 5 years. Okay, let me show you how I broke down this information and the statistical side of it and what exactly it means and what I felt was important. So looking at it right here, we have the MLF Bass Pro Tour Angler of the Year rankings, the top 20 guys since it was created. 2019 was the first year, now we have 5 years. So I think it's safe to say, from my little debate we had a while back, there was even, everyone even agreed on this, that prior to 2021 or so, although there were anglers using forward-facing sonar, it was nowhere near as mainstream as it is now. 2021, you really started to hear about guys using it for tournament wins, both from guys that were sponsored by the electronics companies and guys that were not. So it wasn't like, everyone was keeping it secret, but then it finally people caught on to it. No, I think 2021, 2022, and 2023, we have really seen the entire industry latch onto it. And I don't know if any guys, even John Cox, I know, said he was putting on his boat. Everybody, I think, at the top level on both circuits at least has tried it at the very least, or uses it every single day. I divided this up because I felt that move. I felt, from following these tournaments directly, a split between before 2021 and after 2021. And so we got 5 years, we got 2 before and 3 after. And so you guys can see that line after 2020. So we can take a look at the top 20 Angler of the Year before and after. I don't think I need to explain to you guys why I chose Angler of the Year as the statistic that we're going over here. It's an all-encompassing statistic of who had the best finishes throughout the course of the entire year, based on a point system. Now, these are the top 20 anglers. I felt that the top 10 in Angler of the Year really showed the cream of the crop. The top 10 out of 80 guys in the Bass Pro Tour, the top 10 of about 100 guys on the Bassmaster Elite Series. Now, I wanted to make sense of some names on here and follow some trends. So let's go to the next slide, which is going to be the Bass Pro Tour with some highlighted information. You guys are seeing a whole bunch of different colors associated with the names up there. And let me explain to you guys what the colors mean. Well, first off, you see that same split before 2021 and after 2021 by that bar that goes across the screen there. You're also gonna see a black line marking the top 10 of Angler of the Year. Everyone that's a green name that's on here got a top 10 in Angler of the Year before and after 2021. And so guys like Jeff Sprague, Brant Ehler, Jacob Wheeler, not only were they dominating the sport prior to forward-facing sonar becoming so mainstream, you're also seeing those same names in the top 10 of Angler of the Year after. And then you got guys that I highlighted in yellow, which meant they got a top 20 in Angler of the Year before and after. So I think this is still important because there's guys on here like Andy Morgan, who got 7th in Angler of the Year in 2020 and then got 11th in 2022. This is an angler that was damn near a top 10. So I think it's still very significant. If you are green or yellow, you've had success prior to and after the induction of forward-facing sonar. Now, of course, you're gonna see a lot of red names in here. And so what the red names mean is that it's an angler that's an outlier. They either didn't fish or were not qualified or switched leagues or whatever before or after forward-facing sonar. Therefore, they did not fish both in 2020 and 2021 and beyond. And so those are the red names. We got guys like Mike Iaconelli, who switched back over to the Bassmaster Elite Series. Of course, Aaron Martins, one of my heroes, and Greg Hackney, who also switched to the Elite Series. And then over on the right side, you're gonna see guys like Dakota Ebear, who has had a great career, Matt Becker and Jeremy Lawyer, guys that were not on the Bass Pro Tour prior to that 2021 season. And so those guys are outliers, and I'm not including them in this information right here completely. We're gonna talk about them kind of at the end and what those names mean. And then you also have the guys that are blue and purple. So purple means they only got a top 20 before or after that 2020 to 2021 split there that I put in. So these are guys that, in theory, only could catch them prior to forward-facing sonar when it became super popular and mainstream, and only could catch them after. Guys like Skeet Reese, Mark Davis, Jonathan Van Dam, Bradley Roy, Keith Pochet, Shin Fukai. Those are gentlemen that have gotten in the top 20 in AOI after the Forward Facing Sonar got popular, but not before there in 2019 and 2020. Now, blue is probably the most important color to look at here because blue was the gentleman that got a top 10 in Angler of the Year points only before or only after LiveScope got so mainstream. So the reason I think blue is the most important is, in theory, if guys were only successful or only became successful after LiveScope became so mainstream, that would tell us that, in fact, the older guys are getting pushed out that can't learn the technology, and the younger guys that are scopers are able to dominate the sport. And when we look at the guys beforehand, we got Todd Faircloth, only got a top, he's the only blue guy before. And so he's the only guy that got a top 10 before and hasn't had one since. Now, outliers also happen with Angler of the Years, of course, you know, schedules set up for different guys, and guys get on hot streaks where they, you know, can go have a great season when it's kind of out of their ordinary, and usually they finish in the mid-range in the points, whatever. So then we go over to the right side. We have guys, you know, Justin Lucas. I mean, Justin's a phenomenal fisherman, obviously, but kind of a middle of the age guy now, I would say, in our sport. He's not a middle-aged guy. I think he's only a few years older than me, and I'll say I'm not a middle-aged guy. I'm 34. But he's been around the sport for a very long time, was on the Elite Series, switched over. I'm sure he's great with forward-facing sonar, or very solid and competent with it, but I don't think that a lot of people would look at a guy like Justin Lucas and say that he's only successful because of forward-facing sonar. He won several Bassmaster Elite Series tournaments, you know, back, you know, before this table existed, prior to forward-facing sonar even being created. And then you got Stephen Browning on here. I think it's safe to say that he's not some, you know, phenom with the technology. He's not an older guy, but I believe Stephen Browning's in his 50s. Doesn't fit that mold at all. You got Alton Jones Sr. I wouldn't say he's a savant of the younger generational talent that's 18 years old and plays a lot of video games, so he's really good at using this technology. So I think we can throw him out. Jesse Wiggins is a guy I don't know a ton about, but he was, for the sake of this statistical analysis, he was on the Bass Pro Tour in 2019 and 2020 and did not get a top 20 in points. And now in the last 2 years, he has gotten 6th place in points both years. So I'm sure he is very good with this technology, as are a lot of these guys, or all of these guys. Gerald Sporer is another one on there that I don't think you would consider as like some young gun that was no good beforehand, and now he's an excellent angler with the 1/10th place finish now that it's around. So I think we look at this top 20 and, importantly, studying the top 10 of those guys in the Bass Pro Tour. I think it's safe to say, before we talk about the outliers, that forward-facing sonar, when it comes to an age gap, maybe I should have put the ages of these people next to it, or and then we just start talking about even more different colors I got to create with these guys and everything. But I think it's very safe to say that we don't have a ton of super young anglers that are now in the top 10 that were not there before. That's just my analysis of it, and I think that's pretty fair. So you got Matt Becker now, who was a rookie this season and won Angler of the Year on the Bass Pro Tour. So that's an outlier there, because obviously he wasn't on a top circuit before the 2021 season, and he won. So I don't know a lot about Matt Becker. I don't think a lot of people do as an angler. Obviously a phenomenal season, Rookie of the Year and Angler of the Year. He could be someone that is truly only there because he's great with LiveScope, better than everyone else. Now, Dakota Ebert is, a lot of people know, a phenomenal fisherman, been on the scene the last couple of years and has been fishing extremely well, obviously, from his 4th and 5th place finishes in Angler of the Year the last few years, and does use forward-facing sonar a lot. I know that, but again, if you want to take a look at the data here, I'm not seeing a ton of blue names that are jumping out to me that are, you know, pushing the older generation out of the sport. Now let's go over to the Bassmaster Elite Series Angler of the Year ranking. So this again is the top 20 Bassmaster Elite Series. You have the same lines separating the 2020 and 2021 seasons and the top 10 from the 11th to 20th place finishers. And so there was a little bit more of a trend we're going to talk about in a second with the Bassmaster Elite Series, but all in all, there's a lot more variance, I think, in the Elite Series because you're going to see more anglers the last few years that have finished in the top 10 that have not been on a circuit, a top-level professional circuit, either the Elite Series or the BPT, prior to that 2021. So let's go over the highlighted version and see what jumps out at us right here. So again, we got the same exact color schemes for the different names. We have the green gentlemen, Stetson Blaylock, Corey Johnston, Chris Saldane, Seth Fighter, Brandon Lester, Drew Cook, Drew Benton, Matt Airy, Kyle Welcher, Patrick Walters. I think that's everybody. Those gentlemen all have finished in the top 10 in Angler of the Year points before that 2021 season and from 2021 on. And then again, let's take a look at the guys in yellow who had that top 20 finish before and after. We have Shane LaHoo, Austin Felix, Brock Mosley, David Mullins, Lee Livesey, Chris Johnston. I think that's everybody. Those are guys, again, where they had success before and success after, consistent anglers. The purple guys down below, again, those are guys that only have finished in the top 20 in Angler of the Year points before or after that time. I don't think we're seeing guys afterwards, Jason Christie, Hank Cherry, and Jeff Gustafson. I don't think we're seeing a bunch of guys that are so much better at live scope that they got a top 20 in Angler of the Year points. And then we're going to look at the most important color, which I think for our study here, which is the guys in blue. Beforehand, we're going to see Scott Canterbury, Clark Winlet, Jake Whittaker. Yeah, you could potentially say that Scott Canterbury and Clark Winlet both won Angler of the Year and have not finished in the top 20 the last 3 seasons. So it could be a lack of not latching on to this forward facing sonar. It could be a lot of factors. Who knows? But those are 3 guys right there that are significant for how we broke this down. And then we look over on the right side there, we have Brandon Cobb and Brian Schmidt. Those are the only 2 guys that are in that significant category for me where they finished only in the top 10 after that 2021. So I mean, Brandon Cobb almost won AOY this year. It came down to him and Welcher the last tournament. And I think he said straight up he didn't have forward-facing sonar on his boat at all the first 5 tournaments of the year. So I'd say we can throw him out as it pertains to him only being successful because of forward-facing sonar. And then Brian Schmidt, I know he's very good with this technology. He's also well known as a river rat. A current river fisherman is his strength, being from that the Northeast Potomac River, Chesapeake Bay region, and is definitely not on the super young side of our sport. So to say that he came out of nowhere because of the technology, I think would be a stretch of the imagination. So let's take a look at those guys in the red in the top 10. We have Caleb Summerall, definitely not a big forward-facing sonar guy. I'm sure he's great with it. Caleb's an awesome dude. I'm excited to compete against him this year, but I don't know much about him other than he's from Louisiana and is a shallow water power fisherman type angler. Greg Hackney, again, one of the best to ever do it, but I would think it's safe to say that he's not one of the young, 25 and under guys that has adopted forward-facing sonar. Matt Robertson, I know, is a very good angler with forward-facing sonar from talking to him and from his experience with it. But again, also not someone that's 25 or under that is only successful because of it. I think that'd be kind of a stretch. He just hasn't been in the Elite Series for very long. John Cox is outspoken about not using the technology. I think he just put it on his boat last year and has had all his success prior to forward-facing sonar and after. Now, the rest of the guys on this list, I think you can absolutely make a case that it is younger anglers that, besides Joey Sifuentes, we'll talk about him in a second, but the other 3, Jay Shakurit, Koya, and Tyler Rivette, all guys that are phenomenal with forward-facing sonar. If you want to make the case that they are young dudes that are a step ahead of the game, and a lot of it's due to how good they are and better than the rest of the field with forward-facing sonar, I will hear you out on that. But at the same time, you don't have a lot of data on those guys prior to 2021. Those are outliers for a reason. Now, Joey Cifuentes is an interesting case study. He's fished 1 year on the Elite Series. He won 2 tournaments. As you can see, finished 5th in Angler of the Year points. And he had a career with FLW prior to qualifying through the Opens this last year in 2022. And so he's an interesting case study that might be someone you could say had his success with forward-facing sonar. I think that's going to lead me into my next point before we talk about the catch rates, and that is that this idea that we have scopers and then we have like people doing it the right way, the old-fashioned dudes, is the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard in my life. If you want to throw at me that Koya is only there because he's really good at live scope, then yeah, I could say that, you know, his success with forward-facing sonar has proven itself. That's like his main deal. But I also know that he, you know, won Japan Angler of the Year titles and championships prior to 2017 when the technology came out. But name your person. Drew Cook, phenomenal bed fisherman, probably the best bed fisherman in the world, along with Drew Benton. Those two work together. Both use forward-facing sonar every single day they're out there. The Johnstons, phenomenal with forward-facing sonar. Also phenomenal in shallow grass. Lee Livesey, Matt Robertson, you know, 2 guys that are power fishermen, but are phenomenal with the spinning rod and using forward-facing sonar for smallmouth. You got Patrick Walters, who was catching the shit out of him before forward-facing sonar, is still dominating the sport afterwards. Kyle Welcher wins Angler of the Year this last year, says that he didn't use it in half the tournaments. There is not this idea that people would lead you to believe, the subjective opinions, that you're either a scoper, and that means that you just take your trolling motor, you launch your boat, and you drive your trolling motor to the middle of the lake, and you pan around until you see stuff all day, and you do well because you can catch fish out there in the middle of the lake and it's easy. Or you do it the right way, and you got name your favorite Denny Brower flipper from 1986 flipping the bank. Those are the rest of the guys, and that's the only 2 groups that exist. No, that's not a thing. For guys that, you know, are on the internet chat boards and have been out of the sport since, you know, prior to understanding this technology, maybe that is what they think actually happens, but in reality, you use, you know, your mapping to study, your Google Earth to study, your side imaging to spend the time to put the time in to see what these underwater structures and groups of fish look like. And then at that point, you can or cannot use your forward-facing sonar based on, you know, what the image is coming back as, what species of other fish besides bass are out there, how deep the water is, the turbidity of the water. You use it when you can, but you use it as a tool in conjunction. The same way that you would use 2D sonar, downscan, side imaging, mapping. It's the same. It's just a little bit different technology that allows you to catch them live occasionally, just like you could in 1965 with a flasher if you wanted to, or like you saw in my hundreds of ice fishing videos. And live imaging is brand new technology, right? Anyways, I digress. Let's get into catch rates, talk about how that's changed since forward-facing sonar came out as well. Okay, so here are the Bassmaster Elite Series bass catch statistics given to me by our man Ken Duke, who is the bass historian who keeps track of all this crazy information, only for the Bassmaster Elite Series as far as I know. That's what he gave me. So he provided me all the data, looking at the screen here, from the first year of the Elite Series in 2006 until 2023. So we have the total days fished each year, so per angler per day. So one angler fishes 1 day, that's one. That's what this column is. Bass caught, you know, total bass caught by everyone. Bass per angler per day. These are all 5 fish limit tournaments. Total weight, which is not going to be as important because total weight is going to be also based on how many days they fished. As you can see, you know, some years over here they only fished 1,751 days, whereas opposed to, you know, in 2015 or 2008 they fished 3,000 days because there was more tournaments in the season back then. So that number is not important to me at all for our study, total weight. But these 2 columns over here, average bass weight and angler weight per day, are going to be important to us because it's going to tell us, you know, how big a fish are the anglers catching on average, and of course the most important stat I think we have to look at here, along with the bass per angler per day, is the average weight per day that the field weighed. And at the bottom, of course, you're gonna see the averages of each column. Now, let's talk about the significance of all this data before we get into the picture that it actually is painting. You know, the idea that since we have live scope, that fish are so much easier to catch, that anglers are catching more weight than ever, they're catching more fish than ever. That's one sentiment that's shared by the forward-facing sonar detractors. But the other sentiment on the other side of their mouth they like to talk about over here is that it's wrecking the fisheries. It's the bass are getting, you know, taken out and killed just by natural death rates from angling mortality and tournament mortality faster than ever, and so the catch rates would be lower. And so I don't know which of those we're going to say that they really like to bag on. I guess you'd say it's this side of the mouth over here that says anglers are easy to catch them. Now it's easier to catch bass because of it. So we'll go out of the left side of our mouth, or right side if you're looking at me. Right side of the mouth opinion is what we'll go with there. But really quick, we also have to keep in mind other very, very important variables to this data here, and that is, you know, since this is only the Bassmaster Elite Series, we had the mass exodus there of everybody from 2019 and beyond. And so we talk about, you know, the angler talent that's available. We had a COVID year in 2020 where events got pushed to the fall, which in theory, fish way less and are harder to catch than in the spring tournaments they would have had. We don't know that, but in theory that makes sense. And then of course you have new anglers coming in, you have weather conditions, you have different fisheries on different schedules, which is very important considering, you know, the Sabine River has been on the schedule. It's a very difficult fishery. There's other very difficult fisheries around the country. And this year we don't have that in 2024. You guys know that looking at the schedule. But anyways, you guys understand what I'm trying to say there. So there is variables that are not controllable. So I try to take a 5% variance of the average number, which you see the averages there at the bottom of the screen of each column. And the only important columns to us, really, like I said, are the bass per angler per day, the average bass weight, and the average weight per day per angler. Those are the only three that are important to me. The other ones not so much. But you see the averages there. And so what I mean by a 5% variance is I took 5% times 4.527777. So if the number was greater than 5% lower, then I put it in red, which means it was a significant, a 5% or more variance in the amount of fish caught than the average over the entire period of the Elite Series. If it was greater than 5% variance, then I made it green. That's what these numbers are over here. And as you guys can see, 5%, even with 5% variance, there is very little significant difference on any of these topics, especially the amount of bass that an angler brings in. Basically, you're going to have within 5% variance every single year besides 2015 and 2020 are lower than the 5% difference average. Again, you're not going to see a whole lot of crazy stuff over on the right side. So what I ended up doing was a 2% variance. So I took that same 4.52 number. If it was more than 2% difference, then positive, then it was green. Less than 2% difference negative, then it's red. And if it was within that 2% positive or minus of the average number, then it stayed yellow. I also included these dash lines here. So, you know, live scope first year anglers had on their boats at all was 2017. It wasn't very good. It was Panoptics. Wasn't the full live scope version, whatever. And then again, between 2020 and 2021 was when it really caught on. So that's what these last 3 years represent. So let's analyze this and talk really quick about what it really means, if it means anything, given the variables like weather, scheduling, angler talent, time of year. But I think it's important to talk about our best and worst seasons here. So 2020 was our worst catch rate ever, 4.255 bass per day per angler were brought to the scales. And then this year we had our highest ever, 2023, 4.74, almost 4.75 bass per angler. So again, not a huge variance there and a half of a bass per angler per day. But I think it's easy to look at that and say, look at the schedule the Elite Series went to last year with the catch rate, the number of bass they caught. Everyone caught limits almost the entire field every single day the last 3 events of the season at the St. Lawrence River, at Champlain, and St. Clair. Those are all lakes with a ton of smallmouth in them. where a ton of the field catches them. And then if you look at 2020, again, that was the outlier year where you had the fall tournaments, the very difficult tournaments at Gunnersville, Chickamauga. I believe there was one more. Those are the two that stand out in my mind though. And everything also got pushed back from the springtime, so there was no spring tournaments. And then we want to take a look over here. Our average bass weight, the highest ever, was right here in 2022, followed closely by 2020. So even though it was the lowest catch rate, it was the second highest weight per bass per day. So guys were catching bigger bass in 2020. They just weren't catching as many of them, whatever that means for our scale here. And then you want to look at the lowest angler weight per day was back there in 2011. I haven't looked at that schedule, but I assume it's probably a lot to do with scheduling because it was hammerfest like always in the Elite Series. And the highest was in 2022. It was 14.48 pounds. So 14.5 pounds a day was your average middle of the rung angler every single day the entire year, which is pretty crazy. Followed closely by 2023. So we want to look at this data here, and we want to look at the green and red numbers before, I guess, 2016, 17, and before and after 2020, 2021. And I think you will see that there was a lot more red up above Forward Facing Sonar and a higher average of green down below Forward Facing Sonar. But again, you go back to the 5% variance, you're gonna see a lot less years with green and red. I mean, even afterwards, the average number of bass with 2% variance since this Forward Facing Sonar has really taken off. 2021, we had a year that was below average for the amount of fish guys usually bring in. 2022 was average, 2023 was higher. You could make the case that the last 2 years, we have had a higher angler weight per day, over a pound to a pound and 5/8 or so greater per day per angler. That's significant. But a lot of it, again, is probably due to scheduling, but maybe it's something we take a look at moving forward as the catch rates probably can't continue to go up too crazy of amount, even though we are starting the season at two of the heaviest weight tournaments I think we'll see in a long time at Toledo Bend and Lake Fork. Lake Murray's going to have them. The 3 smallmouth fisheries we're going to are going to be big weight tournaments, and Wheeler Lake could be a big weight tournament as well. So we're going to see a lot more weight get added to this total, this 2024 season on the Elite Series, and I think you got to look at scheduling a lot to do with that as well. Anyways, do with that information what you would like. I think, actually looking at this statistical breakdown, I think we need more time to figure out if the younger guys have truly pushed a lot of the older guys out of the sport. Just looking at the top 20 in AOI points and the top 10 in AOI points, I don't see anything significant on Bass Pro or the Elite Series with as many outliers as we have that really show that or provide the sentiment of the live scope haters that you can't compete without it. The old guys aren't good at it anymore. It's the opposite direction with a lot of these anglers. But I think we also need to think about, I didn't take the time to study the top 20 AOIs the last 40 years of bass fishing. There has always been young blood and young talent. There has always been the Jay Shakurits, the Koyas that have come into the sport and had a ton of success from the start because they're really fucking good. They're really good fishermen, whether they're 20 years old or 60 years old or whatever. You got guys, Frank Talley comes in and wins an Elite Series tournament, one of his first ones that he's fishing. You got Brian New, who wins his very first Elite Series tournament of his career when he was a rookie, prior to Forward Facing Sonar. The biggest thing all this data tells me is what I knew from studying this sport extremely closely, being friends with a lot of these guys and talking to them. And that is, if you were good in dominating the sport prior to Forward Facing Sonar, the Brandon Palaniks, Jacob Wheelers, Dustin Cannell, Patrick Walters, then you're also good afterwards. The same guys that were consistently finishing in the top 10 in AOI, consistently winning tournaments prior to it, consistently in top 20 AOI, are now consistently still in the same spot. These subjective ideas that guys sit and stare at their screens now, and they didn't used to do that before forward-facing sonar, is ridiculous. This idea that this technology that's new is so much more advanced and makes guys that don't deserve to win successful now, or consistently successful, is now, you know, making them win those tournaments, is absolutely ridiculous. Now, before we get out of here, I will leave you guys with one subjective opinion of mine that I think needs to be brought up, and that is based on the opinion from forward-facing sonar detractors that the sport is not watchable. There's no reason to tune in anymore to watch the guy staring at forward-facing sonar on a screen. I'm not watching ever again. And I think people need to slow down a little bit and remember that prior to 5-6 years ago, every tournament was not the Mississippi River in 2017 or 13, you know, frog blowups galore. Every tournament was not Clear Lake in 2009, hunking big plastic swim baits around and cracking 8+ pounders. Every tournament wasn't Denny Brower going down the bank, flipping a jig, catching 35 pounders in a day. Those tournaments were 4 days of all the anglers in a highlight reel put into a 1 hour, less than that, with commercials, 48-minute broadcast for television. That's what you were seeing the highlights of. Now that we have live on TV, we have 5, 6, 7 hours a day, 4-day tournaments. I promise you that if you saw the tournaments back then and you saw Kevin Van Dam scanning around for 7 hours during a tournament, side scanning, or you saw Brent Ehrler or Aaron Martins, or, you know, name your favorite finesse guy, or John Murray out drop shotting on St. Clair on 2D sonar, or you saw any of these tough Florida fishing events or bed fishing events where, you know, guys were catching 2 to 6 fish a day, I don't think that you would have the strong feelings that one of these types of technology is wrecking the sport or making it unwatchable more than, you know, a different type of technology or a way of fishing. Because I hate to break it to you, live fishing and watching other people fish for 6 or 7 or 8 hours is not that exciting, no matter how they are doing it. Highlight reels are great. What the guys do with Bass Live is unbelievably phenomenal for what it is, but you're still seeing guys use all the technology in all different areas of the water column with all different types of baits. That's just, it's ridiculous to me. And on top of that, viewership numbers are increasing. This last year, they went up again. Biggest classic numbers on TV and in person in 2023 as well. So not only is that take and sentiment statistically incorrect, I also personally don't understand what you expect from a 7-hour day of live fishing. But anyways, I digress. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you learned something, comment below. If something was surprising, comment below. And if you think I am completely wrong, please comment below as well. I don't care. It's a free country. It's amazing we live in a place where you're not going to get your hands chopped off for saying that technology should or shouldn't be banned or whatever. But thank you so much for watching this one. I'm out of here. Peace.